Hello, and welcome again to Bridget Breaking Barriers, our masterclass series, Producing Through the Pandemic. I am so excited today to actually talk a little bit about mental health. Mental health is something that a lot of people take for granted and don't necessarily want to talk about. So I'm excited to have a master in her field to talk a little bit more about mental health and share with you about how you can make sure that you're staying mentally healthy during this time. So I would like to introduce Dr. Reba Williams, and I'll have you to just go in and kind of share a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, well, hi, Miss Bridget Breaking Barriers. Thank you for the opportunity. I have known Bridget for many, many years in personal and professional capacities. I have been a licensed clinical mental health counselor in January. State of North Carolina changed it to that long tongue twister. But I have been that for 5 years as a licensed counselor. And prior to that, I've been a professional in the field for almost 20 years. I'm also a licensed clinical addictions counselor. I specialize in treatment of various traumas for children and adults. I'm a mother. I have 4 children. I have a very fast-paced marriage with a husband. It's very demanding, but very motivating as well. And that's me. And I'm a new mother to 2 puppies.
Can't forget about them. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for being a part of this masterclass series and sharing a little bit about yourself. I just wanted to ask a quick question. How did you actually get into mental health?
Oh, honey. I actually started in mental health. Honestly, I think I was 19 years old. I was at Shaw University, and my husband and I were dating at the time, and he was on the coaching team at our school for men's basketball. And him and the head coach was starting his mental health behavioral health program. And I started off at that age developing policies and procedures.
Oh, wow.
So accessing the state of North Carolina, looking at their policy, and translating it over into an agency's policy is actually where I started. And from that piece and being able to understand the administrative part, helped join in with my husband, my to-be husband, in developing a foundation, which was Reaching Your Goals Foundation. And then from there, just stuff started building. I initially was positioning myself to go into the medical field. But I mean, what's better than going into the medical field and going into this field is it's, parallel. And I was actually on track to go to med school. And my husband came and got me from Wake Forest and brought me back down here to North Carolina, back here to Raleigh, which actually was a blessing because we were able to be a blessing to so many other people by those, decisions that we've made. And we changed Reaching Your Goals Foundation over to Reaching Your Goals Inc. And that sprouted the very first offspring of the seed that we had sown for many years. And I started off on the administrative side because I knew policies and procedures. But as different individuals would come in and out of the office and circle around, you would end up talking to them, and seeing what's going on with them and being a sounding board for them, being a piece of comfort for them. And it just kind of naturally manifested into me going back to school to get my master's in professional counseling.
Okay. That's exciting. And I guess I'll kind of share. So that's actually how I met Dr. Reba Williams. She was my boss for many, many years, and I got into the mental health field actually because of her. And so I think from working in the field, I started out doing administrative work, and then I actually started doing direct care, and you begin to see and understand the need for healthcare professionals or mental health care professionals to actually go out into the communities and work with different people. There's so many people who are dealing or struggling with different kind of issues, whether it's something that might be as simple as anxiety, or somebody might think that it's as simple as anxiety, to something as debilitating as maybe like schizophrenia, or some of those other types of illnesses. But there's a wide range. But I think one thing that many times we don't necessarily talk about, especially in our community, is I guess the lack of care and the lack of understanding, and understanding that it's something as simple as just making sure that you're taking care of yourself, because it actually can stem and grow into other things. So I thought that it was important during these times with the pandemic. So many people were already struggling before, but now this has magnified those different struggles, and maybe you were able to actually deal with it or manage it a little bit better before, but now, because you're kind of stuck in the house with everything, you don't necessarily know how to deal with it beyond that. So I thought that this was important for us to actually talk a little bit about mental health. So I would love to hear from you, to kind of share with me about what is mental health, and how do you think that people can practice it more?
Well, Bridget, in my words, mental health is taking care of your mind and your emotions, your heart, being aware of what's going on inside of you in terms of your expression of emotions or inability to express your emotions is very, very serious. When I do a lot of training, whether formal or informal. But one of the things that I say is that mental health is just as serious as having a cardiovascular issue. If you have a heart issue, you're going to take your meds like you're supposed to. Typically, people will. You're going to go to each and every doctor's appointment as scheduled, and you're going to follow a particular routine. And if you don't, chances are that your health will continue to decline. In the same breath, mental health is just as equally important. It is a life or death situation for many people. And the driving force that I can, or piece of nugget of gold that I can give to anybody, is take care of it early before it progresses into something that's worse. Is that not what they tell us about heart disease? Is that not what they tell us about various cancers? Early detection is the key, right? Treatment early is the key. The same thing is my profession about mental health. Getting help early can kind of give you those skills to be able to combat all of the things that are going on in the world. And God knows we're going through a lot right now, right? Right. And I pray for those individuals that came into it totally with no kind of skills to kind of be able to push through. But even if you did, this is a totally different world that we're living in right now. So
right.
How do I use what I used when my life was seemingly normal in this chaos, you know? But yeah, so mental health is being aware of those things that are those intangible things, those emotions, those feelings that are going on, being able to communicate them, being able to manage them, change them if that's what you need to do to be able to thrive and have an awesome, awesome quality of life.
Okay, thank you for that. And so you spoke a lot about what I heard was more like a pivot. So knowing that this is what's going on, so how do I pivot and go in another direction so that I can make sure that I am still mentally healthy? So speak to us a little bit about what that can look like in someone's life. Before, you weren't in the house with your children all day, every day. Before, you were busy doing a lot of different things, so you didn't necessarily have time to think about all of the other crazy things that might be going on in your mind. So what are some things that people can do to actually be able to pivot in their own lives?
One of the first things that I would say is that this pivot that we're all experiencing is something that we can't change, right? Many things that occur in our lives are pivots that are our choices. We can make the choice on whether to go left or to go right. We didn't make this choice to have this pandemic engulf the whole world, right? We didn't make that choice. And I think that if we did have one, I would like to believe that many people would choose not to go down this path. But the reality is that this is a pivot that's been forced upon us. And so we kind of have to deal. So we're in a situation where the choice has been removed from us. And so this is what it is. And just that phenomenon is really difficult for some people to deal with, right? Change is that piece that we're trained on as business leaders, right? In the healthcare industry and Fortune 500 companies, wherever you are in your home, right? Change is something that is not always necessarily easy for us to digest and to adapt to, but it's something that this pivot has been, forced upon us, whether we're parents, whether we are professionals in our various careers, whether we're children, right? Having to now do school from home, whether they're on Zoom meetings or having to do actual paper packets, or having parents have to drive to spots where they now have in North Carolina, they've deployed some school buses that have Wi-Fi that can give Wi-Fi access to individuals that are in rural areas that don't have that access. So how do we pivot? One is keeping it in perspective. That's a big thing for me is, one, what can you change in this, right? Can you change anything around you? Or what is it that's within your circle that you can change? And one of the lessons that that ends up coming up really naturally in my relationships with my clients is, what are those things that you can change? Like, can I change Miss Bridget? I mean, I can talk to her, I can share, my perspectives with her, but at the end of the day, she can say, oh, well, whatever. She just talking, hot air, or she can use that information to kind of re-envision where she wants to go with her decisions. But the reality is that the things that we can change are the things that are within us, right? Mm-hmm. We can change how we think. We can change how we behave. And these are choices that we can use to help us maneuver through these pivots, through these different directions that our life may take that we may not have that outside control over.
Right. So I know, like, for me during this time, I've been trying to be as creative as possible. Hence, the master class. I crocheted my hair. Like, I've been just trying to do like different things. So, what would you speak to in regards to different tools that people can use to help them deal with the anxiety that they might have going on, or anybody that perhaps might be dealing with depression, whether it's something that might not be that serious to somebody who perhaps, might be at the point where they don't want to get out of the bed. So what are some tools that you can share with us that other people can use?
What I would say is look inside and find those things that motivate you, right? For me, I'm not a very crafty person. I realize that. Maybe it's cleaning and reorganizing, doing things that kind of get you up, get you involved to the extent that you can. We don't want to go and hold hands and, skip with our neighbors. But what you may be able to do is, pick some flowers from your garden if this is what motivates you, and leave it on your neighbor's doorstep. That's something someone can do, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's doing gardening work, whether it is learning new recipes, whether it's journaling, that's something that's really easy. A lot of people nowadays, I have a lot of colleagues, they journal on their iPhones in the notes, right? It's easy. You always have it right there. You don't have to go looking for an ink pen or a pen, right? If you pull over and you grab something to eat at Chick-fil-A or whatever your favorite drive-through is right now, you can jump in there and jot some, your ideas or your thoughts right there. So you don't have to wait till you get to a particular spot. You use what you have, right? And we're kind of at that point, is that we have to realize what is it that we have, and use that to motivate ourselves. If you're artistic, use that, right? Or share it. One of the things that I have realized, since the pandemic that helps me is being able to help others. Just kind of think outside that box. And that's refreshing to me, beyond my own individual self-care, tools. So that's what I would say.
Okay, great. So in regards to just talking about mental health, you've given us some great tools for us to be able to dig deep, I guess, to figure out what works for us in particular. But for those people who perhaps might need a little additional assistance, maybe counseling or looking for a therapist, tell us a little bit about, because you are a counselor, tell us a little bit about what you should look for if you decide, I guess, the importance of finding a therapist for you to actually talk to, and also what you should look for if you're actually looking for a therapist to work with.
Well, right now, there are a lot of tools that are literally at our hand. As easy as looking through your phone, right? If you don't have a computer or a tablet, don't let that be the reason that you're not reaching out. If you have, and you know what? In some cases, you don't even have to have the smartest of the smartphones, right?
Right.
Basic smartphone. And even if not, you can call someone, okay? Across many states, teletherapy has been approved, considering the current crisis that the whole world is facing. Some tools that I would say is Psychology Today, psychology.net. Those are tools that you can use to find therapists in your area. Many of them have details into what their specialties are. I would say definitely to be open to the experience, but also recognize, what are your needs and wants? Is this something that you feel you can find an online group chatting community that you can jump in there and my mother-in-law crochets, she likes to learn different patterns, and she likes to jump online and talk to some people that can show her different loops to take. I do not know the vernacular, so forgive me.
No, I don't know.
So that's something that helps her, right? And that's not necessarily a formal therapeutic setting, but that in and of itself is very therapeutic for her. So my thing again is to look inside yourself, figure out what works for you. If a setting like that works well for you, where you're able to figure out some type of motivation and something that keep you encouraged and moving on, do that, right? Some people have more severe needs where they need an actual licensed counselor. One of the things that has been coming up in the media a lot is that with us being locked down into our homes, a couple of things have been on the rise, and that is domestic violence and substance use. Right? A lot of memes on social media are like, well, hey, I don't have to wait till it's 5 o'clock. I might as well start in the morning. Well, okay. Maybe that's your temporary coping mechanism. I can't shoot it down, right? However, that may become a problem in the long run, right? And just recognizing, what are your needs, okay? Because then you may need to just have a substance specialist, right? But a lot of us, as time goes on, specialize in a myriad of things like substance abuse and mental health, which oftentimes kind of are interconnected. And so, yeah, I would say realizing what it is that you need, taking some initiative to reach out. And all it takes is one phone call. And the hope is that at that one phone call, that person will answer on the other end and we'll be able to connect you to what you need, right?
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. One other thing that I definitely wanted to kind of talk a little bit about is grief. During this time, there have been a lot of loss. Many people have lost loved ones, um, and are really struggling. And I think it's even more different now because you can't mourn them like you would normally mourn them, with the normal, funeral service, having family and friends to kind of come and join you and to hug on you and to kind of be there to console you. So during this time, what would you say are some effective ways that people can deal with grief?
So it's very difficult, and I will start with whether it's hit home directly or indirectly. It's still very real, very severe. One of the things that we talk about in trauma is vicarious traumatization, which means that it may not have been a loss that occurred with me. Like, for instance, the issue of Kobe Bryant. A lot of people were traumatized by that. I never met the man.
Right.
I never went to a Lakers game, right? I actually had tickets for my father to go, but something happened with his health and it just kind of fell through.
Yeah.
But the trauma was still there, right? And then it makes you reflect, oh my God, let me think. Then it makes you think about your own, family structures that are similar or other people's, and it makes you have grief. It makes you seriously grieve or experience a sense of loss, or have empathy for that other person that has experienced that loss. And it's a real thing.
Right.
And what I would say, for those individuals that are going through that, is that it is okay. It's normal, whatever that is. That's one of those words that I kind of struggle with. Normal is what you perceive your own normal to be, right? But to say, oh, I'm just so depressed, or I'm just so grief stricken and this can't be normal. It may be normal for you, right? It may be your normal path of disease, just like a COVID has its disease path, or the flu has its disease path, or allergies, Lord knows, has its own disease path. Grief has its own path, and there's no wrong or right answer to it. There's no, oh, well, I'll be okay in a month, or you know what, some people it may be a year or maybe more, right? And then to even know that there may be annual triggers. Mother's Day, right? We just passed that. We're about to go into Father's Day. Those are sometimes triggers for individuals that have lost loved ones that are in those capacities, right? And for those individuals that what I would share with them is to, again, keep it in perspective. Recognize what are those things that you have that are going well in your life. Latch on to those things, right? Revisit strong relationships, right? This is our time to really slow things down, reach out to those people that we may have kind of lost a little bit of touch with, and rekindle that. Do things like we were sharing about your mom that are keeping you busy, halfway organizing, halfway jumping into old memories.
Yeah.
It's kind of that thing that, again, you have to find what works for you. Therapy is not a cookie cutter thing. We're taught theories and techniques, but the reality is when I'm sitting here and I'm across from someone else, yeah, I'm using those techniques, but you carve them out for each individual differently, right? They come to us with different, the person may have had the same exact thing happen to them, but they may be coping with it in two very different ways. It could be gender, it could be race, it could be their socioeconomic status, their experiences, and other things that have happened recently in their lives that make them so different, that because her purse got snatched and her purse got snatched, they're showing totally different signs, So I say that to reiterate, you have to find what works best for you. And what better way to talk about, what way to realize that than to talk about it with someone?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Thank you for sharing. So, during this time, it's been crazy for everyone, and I think we're all trying to figure out what this new normal looks like. And as it continues to evolve, what would you say that during this pandemic that you've actually learned about yourself?
Ooh, okay, that's a great question. Um, I have learned that as a parent, I am challenged in a different way when I'm in a more confined space with my children.
Mhm.
Um, I have learned that I have to seriously not parent each child the same. They require different things, just like I approach my therapeutic relationships differently because they're different people and they need different things from me.
Right.
My children also likewise need very different things from me. And I've realized to kind of take a step back and re-inventory that as I go through the pandemic. Something else that I realized about myself is that I'm a good neighbor.
Okay. Have you been picking flowers and leaving
Well,
on your neighbor's doorstep?
quite. That's not quite my style, but I have been having more, just lengthier conversations, unrushed conversations is what I
Yeah.
say. With
Okay.
many of my neighbors and actually having the time to, and I feel bad about it, but having time to say, hey, what's your name again? And actually remembering my neighbors' names. So
Right.
when they walk back by me, I can say, hey, and, have a shorter conversation with them. I have also learned that there is value in slowing down and breathing. That whole phrase, this gives a whole new meaning to slow down and smell the roses, right? When you're actually forced to slow down. I mean, before my life was leave the house at 7:10 at the latest, and I'd be lucky, especially if it's basketball season, to get back at 8 or 9 at night. But now I'm like here for the most part, and it may be 30 minutes or an hour out. So it's definitely taken a reverse in many people's lives.
Right, right, right. Well, I think it's been a good thing. I'm sure we've all redefined ourselves in the midst of all of this and learned some things that we actually enjoy maybe a little bit more, or
Or don't enjoy.
rediscovering some not so good things.
Right.
So thank you so much for your time. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we closed out in regards to mental health and just dealing with this whole pandemic?
There was one thing that you mentioned earlier that kind of sparked an idea for me to make sure that I talk about. And it kind of was talking about or triggering me to think about um, myths or stigmas that are associated with it. And one of the words that you mentioned, and I think I mentioned it too, was at one point we were professionals in the field, not clinicians, but professionals. And I think that is a lot of, from my experience, then I know that a lot of people that we serve have gotten hiccups because not necessarily everyone that has called their phone, not necessarily everyone that has rang their doorbell or knocked on their door has been professional.
Mm.
And what I encourage people to consider is that while there are that small subset that have not represented therapy or mental health or behavioral health services in the most professional manner, to still give it a chance, right? Um, many of us can attest to going in different places, the grocery store, the hair salon, to our own doctor's offices, and we've
Right,
experienced individuals that are not professional. But does that mean that we shut that totally out? I think we still get those services, right?
right, right.
Even if it means changing which grocery store we go to or which doctor we ask to be scheduled with, right? So my humblest cry is for if you do feel like you need services or you need help for mental health or substance abuse, and you've had a bad taste Give it a try. Try someone else. There are people that are truly professional. There are people that are truly committed to helping you realize whatever change it is that you need. And that would be my parting word, Ms. Bridget.
Thank you. So if anybody wanted to follow you, or if you wanted to share a little bit about anything that you might have coming up, I want to offer you this opportunity to kind of share either where they can follow you or anything that you might have coming up that you want to share with people.
Great. Well, actually, there are things that are brewing. I'm not ready to jump out there early. But my Instagram handle is Dr. Diva Reba. And so that's where everybody can reach me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us. Now we have a clearer understanding of mental health, and stay tuned because we actually will have a part 2 to this mental health series to talk a little bit more, taking a deeper dive into mental health and some other things. So we look forward to having you and hope to see you again. Thank you again, Bridget.
Many blessings, Bridget, breaking barriers.
I know it's a tongue twister. All right. Thank you.
God bless you.